legend says ape and human live side by side. Impossible as that may seem.
Why do they hunt her?
She is smarter than most.
The elders did not tell us everything about this world.
Together, you will die.
No, together, strong.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone, where we love talking about movies and more. I'm your host, Mason Phillips, and today I got a review for you for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. It's been a while since I've been on this channel doing movie reviews. Glad to get back to it. So now, let's talk about the plot. Many years after the reign of Caesar, a young ape goes on a journey that will lead him to question everything he's been taught about the past and make choices that will define a future for apes and humans alike. What was good about this movie? Well, for me, there are a lot of points I want to hit on this section of the video. I think it's another solid sequel in this Planet of the Apes franchise, at least the modern era. It started with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, continued with Dawn, and then War for the Planet of the Apes. This is the fourth film in this specific continuity. Since they rebooted it with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I have enjoyed each entry in this saga. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is still my favorite of the entire series, but I would actually say that Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes has got to be my second favorite of this entire series. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Overall, I thought it was a great experience at theaters. Before I go even further into this review, I'm telling you guys, go check it out if you haven't already. I know it's been out in theaters for a little while. I was a little late getting to it, but guys, if you haven't seen it, give it a shot. For whatever reason you haven't been out to see it, go check it out before it leaves theaters. It's a great time at the movie theater. It's the perfect way to see this movie. So guys, I'm encouraging you, if you can, get out to the theater and go see this movie. So the second point, why was this movie so good? Since Rise of the Planet of the Apes, these films have given you believable characters that are fully CGI. These apes aren't real. They're actors in motion capture suits, and like with Andy Serkis's Caesar and all the other actors who have portrayed these apes in the past, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes knocks it out of the park with the CGI work done on these characters. I was bought in, never thought, oh, I'm looking at a CGI character on screen. No, everything was very photorealistic, but the characters were also able to still give plenty of emotion. I was bought in with the performances of these actors, and in large part wasn't even thinking about the actors playing these characters, was just bought in to the characters themselves. This series knocks it out of the park with bringing these characters to life. Yes, they're CGI, but they're very, very believable. There's nothing that I thought was half-baked CGI work in this film. I thought the visual effects were done fantastically. I thought it was done very well. Another thing that I thought this movie did very well was the conflict between the humans and the apes. I thought it was very compelling. At the end of the movie, you're really not sure whose side should you have been rooting for. I do have a few little gripes with that. Overall, I thought it was done very well. You're conflicted as an audience member as to who you should be rooting for, and I think that's what the movie was going for. I was bought in with what the apes were going for, but I could also sympathize with the humans. Being a human myself, I could sympathize with what was going on with them. Specifically, this world was ours. Yes, we are the ones that created the virus. We created our own downfall and gave rise to the intelligence of the apes. And it has this question of whose world is this now? Does it belong to the apes? Does it belong to the humans? Just because the humans were the dominant species at one point, does that mean that they should be the dominant species going forward? Should the apes be the dominant species going forward? If you know anything about the Planet of the Apes series, with the classic films, it may end in a very, very interesting way that will either make a lot of you happy or anger a lot of the fans of this franchise. If you haven't seen the classic Planet of the Apes movies, it's not required viewing for this series, but I do recommend you at least go back and watch the original Planet of the Apes film starring Charlton Heston. That is a great film. I think it still holds up to this day. It's a little dated in how it's made. It's a 1960s sci-fi film, but I think you'll really enjoy it. Give that film a shot. It's really good, and I think it's worth your time. again, the conflict. Should we be rooting for the apes? Should we be rooting for the humans? It doesn't really give you a clear answer. It's probably pointing you more towards the apes, but it's not so black and white. There's a little bit of gray mixed in there, which I think was handled, for the most part, pretty well. Another thing I thought was really good, I think Wes Ball picked up the baton of directing very well. I think he was a perfect pick to take on the directing duties after Matt Reeves left the series, after he directed Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for the Planet of the Apes. He's directing the Robert Pattinson Batman series right now. Now we have Wes Ball as our director, who directed the Maze Runner trilogy previous to this film. And this is actually only his fourth theatrical film that he's done. He did the Maze Runner trilogy, and then he did this film. It was interesting to me. Not somebody who I would expect and who I would have picked to step into the shoes of director for this specific project. But after seeing the movie, I think he did a great job with it. I think he paid a lot of respect to what the previous creators did in this series. He paid a lot of respect to the classic Planet of the Apes movies, the series that he's already stepping into, and that's something I have to applaud. I don't feel like a lot of franchises nowadays really respect their roots, where they came from. And I think the Planet of the Apes series has consistently done so. It's so refreshing to see a franchise handled with care and handled with respect, not trying to step on or negate what came before it, but build upon it and continue to impress the fan base. Thank you, Wes Ball, for continuing that, pushing this series forward in a positive direction, at least where this fan is concerned. Thank you very much. Another thing is, it feels like a modern update to the classic formula of the Planet of the Apes. It has that classic Planet of the Apes feel from the 1960s, 1970s, but with the modern twist. We're now in this era where the humans are largely unintelligent, the apes are now the intelligent species reigning over the planet, and so you are having this change where the humans were the reigning species at the beginning of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Still kind of so in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Not so much in War, but there was still some of that element there. And then you get to this movie that really is starting to fall in line with the classic Planet of the Apes films that started with Charlton Heston in the 1960s. Really appreciate that. Bringing the modern twist, modern style of filmmaking. We got the apes that look more like real chimpanzees and not actors in makeup and masks, but still giving it that original Planet of the Apes flair. So I really appreciated that. And apes on horses. Come on, apes are riding the horses again, just like the classic film series. So always appreciate seeing that on screen. I love it. And Caesar's presence is still felt in this film. This film, of course, takes place generations after the events of War for the Planet of the Apes. Spoilers for the end of War for the Planet of the Apes if you haven't seen it. At the very end of the film, Caesar unfortunately passes away. But his presence, what he stood for, is still felt in this film, and it's interesting to see how the different sections of apes honor or twist who Caesar was. So there's one character, Raka, who is still trying to preserve the memory of Caesar, trying to preserve the values, the teachings of Caesar, and passing those on to the modern apes. So he's still trying to carry that forward, trying to honor who Caesar was, because a lot of the apes are forgetting really where their foundation came from. I don't know how far in the future this movie's supposed to be set. It says several generations have passed, so I'm thinking at least a couple hundred years have passed at this point. And then we have our King Proximus, who's twisting Caesar's words, saying that Caesar wanted nothing but apes to be the rulers, humans to be brought down to their knees, and basically there's no hope of apes and humans intermingling or sharing this world. It's all about the apes, and it's all about power and control. And that's not the teachings of Caesar, so there's just this twist of, as generations pass on, as time passes on, figureheads of the past, their words are now being twisted and being used by manipulative forces, and there's the small handful that are still trying to uphold the true words and the true meaning of these figureheads. So it's not really a spoiler, that's a big part of the film. You feel Caesar's presence throughout the entire film, even though he's not in the movie specifically. There's a little flashback at the beginning of the movie that touches on the end of War for the Planet of the Apes. But largely, Caesar's not present in this film physically, but his presence just felt throughout. You're thinking about him. He's still, in a way, a character in this film, and I really appreciated that too. They call him the original lawgiver, which that's a callback to the classic series of Planet of the Apes. Again, just these little callbacks, nice callbacks to the original series, callbacks to the earlier films in this rebooted series. I really appreciated all of those elements. And lastly, there's some surprising actors that showed up in this. I'm not going to give away who they are. There's one actor specifically that popped up in this film. It was very surprising to see. They provided a great role in this film, so I'm not going to give away who it is, but I'm thinking a lot of you will be pleasantly surprised once you see them show up in the movie. So now let's talk about what was mixed about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I don't have a lot of things in the mixed section of this film, but one of them was, unfortunately, the score. I thought the score was a solid score. The musical cues in this film were done, I thought, very solidly. I had no large complaints about it. Nothing was jarring, but nothing was memorable. It was a very unmemorable score, and maybe that was the goal. You know, it's really just supposed to be a background to what's going on. Honestly, for me, that's actually been a big problem with the Planet of the Apes films, is I don't think the scores, the music, has really ever been very outstanding. Something I always had a complaint with in this series is I never thought the musical score ever really stood out in these movies. It's always been solid. The only thing that I did remember was the original score from the original film starring Charlton Heston. That movie, its score is repurposed in this, but other than that, I thought the rest of the score was very underwhelming. And then the other thing I thought was mixed. I never want to call out an actor for them as a person. This is no attack on any specific actor, but I did think that the main actress of the film, Freya Ellen, who plays May, I thought that her performance was solid, but I thought it was lacking emotion. Maybe that was the way she was directed, maybe that was the way her character was written. So again, not attacking the actor at all, not doing that. I'm just saying that as far as the way her character was portrayed on screen, I thought it left much to be desired. Not a bad performance, a very solid performance, but a performance that I thought lacked a lot of emotion. So it was hard for me to really buy in to what she was doing. You know, I wanted to be empathetic with her cause. I wanted to be on her side. And I was, in a sense. It was just hard for me to really buy into her performance. I bought into the Apes performance. You know, I thought the performance of all of the actors who were portraying the Apes was done very solidly, very well. I was bought in with each performance there. Her performance, unfortunately, I just thought fell a little short of the Apes, which is ironic that the live action performance is the one that I thought was lacking, whereas the Apes, the CGI performance, those actors, and motion capture, I thought was actually performed at a much greater scale. I was much more invested in what was going on with them versus what was going on with our human character here. So again, not going after the actor, I just thought either it was the directing or maybe the writing. For whatever reason, that performance just felt a little flat for me. So now let's move on and let's talk about what was bad about this movie. So I really only have one spot that was bad with this film, and that's the ending. The ending was nice. Are we supposed to root for the humans? Are we supposed to root for the apes? Where this movie goes, where it possibly sets up for future sequels, they are kind of teasing something for the future at the end of this movie. No post-credit scene though, so if you go to the movies and see this, don't worry about waiting through the credits. There's no post-credit scene. But the very end of the film, do we root for the humans? Do we root for the apes? Whose world really is this? It doesn't really give a clear direction on who we should have been rooting for in the conflict. I think, while that might have been the intention of the director, I do think we should have had a clear answer on who are we supposed to be following, because in the previous films, although I was sympathetic towards the humans at times, depending on who those humans were, I was largely on the side of the apes, partly because of Andy Serkis' performance as Caesar. I thought it was written in a way to where I could easily get behind their cause. Although the humans were losing the control of the world, I was becoming very sympathetic towards the cause of the apes. This movie, while I'm still sympathetic towards the cause of most of the apes, at the end of the day, I don't really know who the director, who the writers were trying to push as the characters we should be rooting for, the characters that we should be backing. Maybe that's up for the audience to decide, I don't know, but I do wish they made that a little more clear in the end of the film. But that's just a little nitpick. Otherwise, I thought this movie was handled very well, a great continuation of the Planet of the Apes series. So now let's get into my final thoughts on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I really liked this movie. I thought it was a solid continuation in the Planet of the Apes series, especially this rebooted series starting with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn, and then War. And now we got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I really do hope that there is a sequel, a follow-up to this series. I'm pretty sure there will be, but the box office may say otherwise. We'll see how this plays out. Still in theaters, guys, I really recommend you go check this movie out. If you haven't seen the previous 3 movies in this series, while they will help you to gain a greater context for what's going on in this movie, because this movie is set several hundred years or so in the future, those movies really aren't maybe necessary reviewing for this one. You can go into Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes having not seen those movies and still be able to understand what's going on in the film and still be able to have a good time with it. If I'm going to give this movie a ranking, it's got to be a 4.5 out of 5 or an A- on the letter scale. My second favorite movie in this rebooted series of Planet of the Apes. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is still my favorite. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is now my second favorite. My third favorite would have to be War, and then finally Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I love this series of films. It's a very underrated series of films, in my opinion. I don't think enough people talk about these movies. I think more people should be flocking to the theater to go see these movies. Go check out Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes if you haven't had a chance already. Go down in the comment section. Let me know what you thought of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, what you are loving about the series, what you hope to see in this series in the future. Go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get notified when new videos go live on this channel. I hope you all have an awesome and a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video.